First guest, well, if the definition of the perfect commentator is someone who's knowledgeable and articulate about his chosen subject, besotted by it, but not to the point of being blind to its faults, then I've just defined him. His life has been athletics, first as participant, then coach, now commentator. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Pickering. Ron, the last time we were here, it was before the Olympics, in fact, and you had very definite views about us participating there. Have you changed your mind after the event?
No, I think I said, Mike, if I had to, I'd walk there. But fortunately, BBC decided to go after all. And I'm very glad I did, because, we kept the flame burning. And I don't think a lot of people realise that this flame that we talk about, this sanctuary of sport, has been with us longer than most other aspects of man's aspiration. It's really been with us about 33 centuries. It's older than any religion, and it really should be bigger than politics. And on this occasion, I think it was. I think it was justified. It was a marvellous Games. We had more world records, more Olympic records, more European records than ever before. Of course, some countries were sadly missed, and there was a sad international grey cloud hanging over the Games. But it was the finest opening and closing ceremony I've ever seen. And of course it gave a chance for our British athletes to prove that they are the best in the world, and I didn't want them to lose that opportunity. So, yes.
I know you've just come back from Los Angeles, in fact, where they're going to have the next Games. Do you think there's going to be a tit for tat from the Russians there? They're going to boycott those Games, do you think?
I don't think they will. I think the very reverse will happen. I think I may have said that last time. But I know what I think will happen is the Russians, who have got a superb team at the moment, and the Americans are down. They've got about 3 years to put it right. But I think the Russians would like to go and wipe out as many of the Americans as they can. They'll have a very good team across all events. But what's funny about Los Angeles, having just visiting there, is the entirely different attitude. Even the Americans are saying, well, we'll not be held to ransom again. We don't want 1 cent of government money, so that there is no political interference in the Games. However, it does mean going commercial in a way that's never been seen before.
Like what?
Well, it means that we're going to finish up with the swimming taking place in the McDonald's fast food chain Olympic pool. And it's going to be the Coca-Cola Olympic velodrome. And everyone's donating all those things.
I see. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, do you think?
Well, I approve of lack of political interference. That, of course, has to be approved. But once the commercial entrepreneurs get into sport, that's an area which I sweat about. I worry myself to death. Give it back to the philosophers and the teachers, for heaven's sake, because sport's in a lot of trouble right now.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's commercialism apart. What else struck you in America? I mean, it's perfectly true that, what the American athletes are up to now, I suppose the rest of the world or us get up to later. I mean, what are the things out there that bothered you?
Well, one of the things I caught up with was a movie, and you're a movie buff like me, and I saw the film on American football called North Dallas 40 on drugs in sport. Now that was fantastic, the pure naked aggression, and nobody denied it, and everybody said that's American football, that's our game. And we've now got the curious anomaly of athletes filing charges against coaches and team managers and suing them for making them drug addicts. Really? Now, they're actually making a profit out of being a drug addict. And that is astonishing. I saw about 5 of the big football games on television. The Super Bowl, the Cotton Bowl. Well, it wasn't the Super Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and many of the other bowls. And if you want to see unbridled aggression in sport, it's there. When I talked to the athletes, and I got very close to them when I went to athletic meets, I talked to old Olympians like Hal Connolly, former Olympic champion, and he said, yeah, it's rife. It's not just the anabolic steroid thing. He estimates that 70% of their best athletes in all their big sports are on some form of ergogenic aid, some sort of drug. And
what kind of drugs would there be, Ron?
Well, the surprising thing, the growth thing, is cocaine.
Coke?
Coke, yeah. When one of the sprinters told one of our sprinters they were on coke, he went off and bought a box of cans, and and they didn't quite get the scene. But they are. They're on. It's the middle class's marijuana in America now. Those that can afford it. Mind you, it's about $2,000 an ounce. But the sprinters, and even some of the sprinters we've seen in Europe, if they want to get on a high, if they're having 3 races a week and they really want to space themselves out, and it hits them for about 3 or 4 minutes, and that's all they need as sprinters, It's no wonder they don't look as if they know where they're going at the end of the race. That's the sort of thing they're on. They're on uppers and downers. It's a hangover from the American game of football and from basketball. The coach, it's a religion. It's get out there and kill the opposition, kill in inverted commas, and it's do everything in your power to do that. Get yourself on such a high that you won't feel pain yourself, and you will annihilate the opposition. And they've lost their way because they've confused aggression with assertion. And that's the danger in our sport today.
Assertion important in sport, an important
Vital.
ingredient. But
that's what kids have got to understand. It's the ability to overcome, including the ability to overcome oneself and one's own shortcomings. It's not just to assert over the opposition. You can still finish second and be assertive. Aggression is about the professional foul.
Yes.
It's about win at all costs.
Yes.
It's living in a materialistic society and making that the object of the event.
You think that the society dictates to the sport? Do you?
Absolutely.
You do?
Not only in commercial terms, but in drug abuse terms. I know that you feel, as I do, that sport is suffering very badly from drug abuse, and it is. It's a ghastly tale. And we're trying to do something about it. But if you look at society by comparison, the growth of drug abuse in society is far greater than in sport. We all gobble an aspirin here. We start the day with a couple of cups of coffee and caffeine to get ourselves straightened up. If things are not going too well, we pop a couple of Valium tablets. We have a couple of drinks at night if things, aren't going well again. And we sniff a decongestant here, and we're all at it. Incidentally, I must say that the last time I appeared on this program, I had a shocking cold. Took a couple of Mucron tablets before I came on to improve my performance. Took some drugs. Practically couldn't speak. I was chewing cotton wool. But I mean, that's the sort of thing we do.
Yes.
I thought, I've got a problem, let's solve the problem.
Yes.
And that's what society is doing. And we're looking in horror at kids in athletics or kids in sport that are doing it, and yet it really is an extension of society.
Let's talk about these kids in sport. Let's take gymnastics as an example, where you get these very, very young kids, particularly girls, who are the best now.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of drugs are used there? For what purpose?
Yeah, I think I share your worry, Mike. If there's going to be drugs in professional sport, how far down the line does it go?
Right.
At what age do kids start?
Right.
What sort of effect does that have? I mean, heavens, not on young gymnasts, surely. Here's the most aesthetically pleasing sport in the world that turns us on. It's magic, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Corbett's on the beam. Turisheva is, it really is high drama. Now, it would be unfair to label gymnastics as drug takers. There's never been one gymnast that's been proven to have taken drugs. But what has happened is this, that those countries that have an infrastructure of looking for talent, like the Russians, the East Germans, to some extent the West Germans, and we try to copy this. We want our talent. They're looking for younger and younger kids. Nadia Comaneci was picked up in an adventure playground for being a gutsy little tomboy that could beat all the boys and never cried, and the gymnastic coach thought, what a talent, she's got courage. Now, what they do is they pick kids who they plot on a graph to see that they're not going to be too tall and they're not going to be too heavy. They're a somatotype. They fit into a pattern. And therefore, they're pretty safe in spending their energy and their time on developing them. It's rather like our ballet dancers. If a kid gets to the age of 11 in this country and she starts to take size 6 in shoes, they drop them. Now, the Russians and the East Germans pick them sooner. And what has come out of that is that those kids start their gymnastic training, and the gymnasts are rather like the swimmers. They start very young. And so you don't have a problem with social development, not until later on. You can train these kids 4 hours a day. They don't have the imagination to know much better, and they're very good to coach. But when they start going through puberty, you've got a problem, and all girls have got a problem in terms of keeping their training going. And it's been a long practice to use ovulatory suppressants. For 1 week during the month, that's a normal, reasonable social argument. What they've found with the youngsters, if they continue to use these simply to allow the kids to train for 4 hours a day, is that it retards their development. So it's a simple estrogen, the sort of thing that our wives might take as the pill, that they're taking for the best possible reasons. But you learn through excessive use that there are side effects that we didn't cater for.
Yes.
And so there are kids now taking these drugs which retard their development. Although there's a Dr. Klein in West Germany, and I was at a press conference with him in Russia, when he said to the Russians, and I said to the Russians, are you happy with the social image that gymnastics is showing. You know, if this was your daughter, you know, and they no longer look like Turisheva, but they all look like stunted dwarfs, would you be happy? And he immediately leapt up and said, "You're accusing us of taking drugs." And we said, "No, we're not doing that at all. We're asking you whether gymnastics is improving its social image or whether it's not." And this Klein said that he thought it was possible to take a drug that would delay menarche, the onset of menstruation, and that would retard development as well. And I think anything which manipulates progress in that way has got to be watched. I don't care whether
in the name
it's...
of what, for God's sake?
That's right. That's
but
right.
What about what's the worst? You mentioned side effects there. What's the worst recorded example of side effects?
Well, of course, we've just had the story of Stella Walsh dying, sadly, in America. This is a girl who was Stella Wallachek, was a Polish immigrant that went to America, and everybody was a little worried about her anyway, because, you know, these girls that live in that twilight stage, you know, the balance between male and female sexuality can be very close at times. And sport naturally attracts those girls who are erring towards the masculine, the tomboy, some of whom can be remarkably attractive. You know, you look at your Mary Toomeys, your Mary Rand, you know, you know, your Suzanne Danders, they're absolutely gorgeous girls. But there are others who are broad-shouldered, narrow-hipped, flat-chested, who are ideal for high jump. You don't, you know, expect to see Sophia Loren going over a high jump bar somehow. I mean, it just doesn't, you know, just doesn't gel. And there they are. There are these girls, and I think Stella Walsh, the autopsy has just shown that she wasn't exactly normal. They're not saying, the coroner's not saying too much about it, but I'm not surprised that the guy who married her early on and left very soon
she had developed male characteristics.
Yeah, she developed male characteristics. She certainly had male characteristics, and I would have thought that everyone that ran against her at the time knew it anyway.
Yes.
I mean, my own wife ran against a girl in the French team who's now a French waiter, and I can remember saying, did you ever share the showers with her? And she said, no, I avoided it. So yeah, there have been a lot of those problems. Sadly, and to be serious, most of them are very sad social cases.
Yes,
and,
of course.
And I'd like to exonerate really my own sport of athletics for putting the scrutiny on a thing like a sex test, because it was done for the best possible reason. It was done to point out to those kids that if they had a problem, they ought to do something about it. Yes. It wasn't done to stop the men competing as girls, really.
But there's now, very stringent tests.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've been to the forefront of this, of promoting all this. But athletes, is it the case that they are using drugs that defy the test? In other words,
sure.
The testing is not for the
sad thing is that as much as the drug testers are trying to impose restrictions, and incidentally we lead in this as well, Professor Brooks and Beckett, two of the leading world authorities, stem from this country. Arthur Gold himself, a great servant of athletics, is one of the great stalwarts against drug testing. And the Americans went out there saying, geez, crap, we're not coming to Britain to compete. You guys are on a witch hunt all the time. They really know that. And our guys suffer because they say, we have the hard times, these guys get away with it. So there is that in it. And we, are much more stringent, and we're asking guys to be much more stringent in this country. Yeah.
But given what we talked about earlier at the beginning, this increased commercialism, the different attitudes in sport that go out and win at all costs, how can you ever get back to what sport's about, to what I believe sport is? And I know
Sure.
you do too.
Yeah, we have a lovely romantic image of it. I tell kids about C.B. Fry putting his cigar on the side and rolling up his trousers and whipping along, Fenners and breaking the world record. It's a lovely, lovely image. Those days are gone forever. The boys' own paper stuff almost came back. We've got in Coe and Ovid the two greatest middle distance runners the world has ever seen,
right.
Not just Britain. We've got some remarkable kids, Daley Thompson and Alan Wells. They're smashing. And a lot of kids want to follow that image, and it's right and proper. And there's a magic and a mystery about them as well. Daley Thompson's a kid that comes from West London, from a deprived background and makes the grade. And Alan Wells only makes it when he's 24. He goes into a garage and trains like an old professional boxer, and we, the coaches, we can't understand what he's doing, but he makes the grade. And you've got all these images. So there's a lot of good in sport. What we've got to keep doing is selling that good image. because these kids didn't take drugs. These kids are absolutely clear. And we've got to say to kids, you know, the reason that sport's been around for 33 centuries is that there's always been a protective clause. We've always made it larger than life. We've always made it a sanctuary. We've always wanted it as something which has a morality. Never mind about what we feel about other things, but in that, it's the job of coaches, it's the job of teachers, it's the job of the media to present that image of sport and sell it as that image, because otherwise you'll never get your Claire Francis who step off on one grey November day and say, I'm going to sail around the world, or I'm going to climb Everest. Nobody puts a price on that.
Yeah.
Nobody can or ever will. And I think that effort that comes from man's spirit, you know, can never be paid for. You just can't pay guys to do that sort of thing.
Ron Pickering, thank you very much for the moment. Ron Pickering.
Thank you.